Just hold on for 1 minute. We're just going to reset up things here to get Joe Becton all set for our feature presentation for today.
All right. Well, as you know, I've been.
Say 2 words about you here.
All right. Okay.
So I'll just say really quickly, for those of you who maybe don't know Joe Becton, master guide Joe Becton has over 40 years experience as a historian. He specializes in making history engaging through music, storytelling, and historical attire. And that's just the short description. I'm sure any of us who know Joe know that he is just a wealth of knowledge and charisma and talent and just everything. So we love Joe. So glad. Big warm round of applause for Joe.
Well, once again, thank you very much. As you can see, I'm utilizing our symbol, as you notice that, right? The Tour Guide Association symbol. Oh, that's why they're looking at me so weird, right? Well, of course, I was still working for the Park Service when this organization began, but there were some difficult circumstances that started the whole thing, and we grew out of those circumstances to be where we are today. Actually naming historical streets, people coming to us for information. When this whole thing started, it wasn't really like that, So I'm very proud, to be a part of it. I wasn't there in the beginning. I think it was Ernest and Brian, and there was a third guy, Roy. Roy, yeah, he's not very popular around here, but yeah, it was the third. Nope. Well, so as I said, it keeps growing and growing and growing. So I'm very proud of the kind of things that we have to accomplish. Most of my life, or at least half of my life, the Declaration of Independence, the Independence Hall, the Constitution of the United States, and those other important documents. Now, I don't know how many of you were here over at the Dutch Reformed Church not too long ago. We had 3 wonderful women talking about these documents. Anybody was here for that? Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, if you didn't, you missed it, because they were, each one had his own perspective. There was, I believe all of them had at least master's degrees and 2 of them had PhDs. And all of them had PhDs. All right, very good. So they, the first one, she centered in on the guys, the timing, when things happen. She was really, really good. But you know how people in history are. We like to mess with people. We attack them and stuff. You ever notice that? Okay. So you have noticed that too. So I was being very good, sitting there quiet. And then she mentioned that the Declaration of Independence was maybe the first document of its kind. And of course, that kind of, gave me the heebie-jeebies, the first document of its kind. Of course, there was another document of its kind done by Europeans. Anybody remember what it was? Magna Carta. Wow. Now, Magna Carta would be like a constitution rather than a declaration, though, or would it? What do you think? Well, of course, Magna Carta is way, way back there too. That's it. I know. I think in Switzerland they had a constitution that they started in 1200. Right? Anybody remember that one? A Swiss constitution. The cantons joined together and made Switzerland. Yeah, about 1200, somewhere around there. So, but even that one was more like a constitution than a declaration. But yeah, that's the one I was going to talk about. The Netherlands, right? So the Netherlands were associated with Spain, right? Philip became the king of Spain and he started doing mean things to them. So they decided, you know what? We don't like you and we're going to write a paper and we're going to leave the empire. Now, it's amazing in the 21st century, you could still run into people who think empire is the best form of government, the most functional form of government. I've talked to a couple of guys from England who really, really, really believe that everything is going to go back to empire. And of course, that's not what this was about. This was anti-empire, and we had that first stop with the Dutch. The act of adjudication. Is that how they say it? And the Dutch have a very special word that when they say that word, it means the document. But I brought up, I said, well, in a nice way. I said, well, ma'am, are you familiar with the Netherlands Declaration? And she said, oh, yeah, I'm familiar with it, but it's very different than our declaration. So that was one thing I I can be weird like that. So I got a little weird on that one. And then the second lady, she came from Westchester University, and she was making great connections with Fred Douglass and the Constitution. Fred Douglass and the Constitution. Fred loved the Constitution. Yes, he did. He thought it was the greatest thing going. Now, everybody didn't agree with him. One of my favorite abolitionists was a woman named Sojourner Truth. And Sojourner said, something's wrong with that boy. He liked the Constitution. What's in there for women? What's in there for children? What's in there for black men? You like the Constitution. So there was an agitation between those two, Sojourner Truth and Fred Douglass. I think I did ask her about the relationship between the two, and she mentioned it. And then the final one, she was talking about women's rights and the Declaration. And of course, she was very, very good too. Only one thing I could disagree with. She said that in the Declaration of Independence, when they said all men, they actually meant all people. Well, I don't think so. I don't think that's true at all. I think they meant men, and they said men, and they meant men. So the Declaration of Independence, right? So we get started. Anybody remember? Do we write first? Do we think first? Or do we fight first? Anybody remember? We fight first. That's right. Lexington, Concord, the Citadel. We're fighting long before we sat down to write. But when we did sit down to write, we had these 5 great individuals. Everybody remember them? Number 1, John Adams. John Adams. Number 2, Radcliffe. Well, no, not Radcliffe. Robert Livingston, New York. Yeah. 2, Roger Sherman. I think Roger Sherman is the best, really, because nobody ever remembers him. Yep. But Roger Sherman actually signed all 3 documents. That's right. Declaration, Articles, and Constitution. So we've got Robert Livingston. We've got John Adams. We've got Roger Sherman. There's 2 more. Ben Franklin, the most famous Philadelphian who was ever born in Boston. Yeah. Ben Franklin. Right? And last but not least, you're right, Thomas Jefferson. How can we leave him till last? What's up with that? So these are the 5 guys. Thomas Jefferson said that he was going to blame certain things on the king, and they removed 44 words from his suggestion. All right. So there's a lot of changing that's going on, hands switching back and forth. In the end, though, we end up with this wonderful statement: for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, that's my favorite part of the whole thing, especially the pursuit of happiness part. I really like that part. But, we kind of think, well, we just came up with that, but actually we didn't. Anybody remember the British had their 3? Remember the British 3? Life, liberty, and property. Aha. John Locke. Yeah. Life, liberty, and property. All right. That was now, it's a problem for me if I'm somebody's property and I want to pursue my happiness. There could be a disconnect there, right? So that was a little bit of a problem. How about the French? Anybody remember theirs? Yeah, you rock. Liberty, equality, fraternity. Now, we remember those. We remember, of course, the Great Revolution, 1789. Right after that revolution happens over there in Paris, another revolution happens over here in America on a large island called Saint-Domingue. Right? Hispaniola is the name of the island. Saint-Domingue is the name of the country. Now, I always feel like it's obscured, it's hidden. Why is Saint-Domingue hidden? Because when we say Saint-Domingue today, people go, huh? What? Saint-Domingue? You mean Santo Domingo? Well, actually, yeah, that is what we mean. So the island has been split in half. Part of it is Spanish, part of it is French. And the French part we call Haiti or Haiti. Now, when 1804, when the Africans took over Haiti, guess what they did? They ended slavery. Whoa. Now, wait a minute. We always call Philadelphia the cradle of and the birthplace of, but maybe it was born someplace else. So, sure enough, liberty, equality, fraternity. The Haitians actually managed to beat the Spanish, they beat the French, they beat the British, and they beat the French again. So that's how they ended up in that situation. Why did they fight so hard? Because it was the richest island on the planet. What did they grow? Sugar. Poisonous and addictive, right? Yo ho ho and a bottle of rum. That's right, that's right. And we made, of course, millions, maybe billions off of the sale of that particular product or those particular products. So that's why Haiti was so important. And when they took it away from the market, it went down, 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 down. And of course, today, we say that Haiti is the poorest island in the world when it started out as the richest island in the world. So that was the first country in the New World to end slavery. Anybody know what the second country was? Brazil. Well, you know what? That's a good guess because Brazil didn't end until 1888. But the guys who did end in 1822, these are, you know what? You always see them in the cowboy movies. They're on their horses and they're riding like crazy. They're on their way to Mexico because Mexico was well, you know what? In 1822, they got away from Spain. As a matter of fact, there's a guy right here in town that's instrumental in that. Guillermo Duane. We call him William Duane. Anybody remember? Ah, man, William Duane is the good friend of Ben Franklin's grandson, Ben Franklin Bache. And they were printers and writers together, right? So actually some local guys beat Benjamin Franklin Bache almost to death. And that's, he caught a disease and after being beat in the courtyard, he died. So William Duane, of course, like any good friend would, married his wife and took over everything that he had done. So when you go to South America, if you say Guillermo Duane, everybody will know because Guillermo Duane passed on some of those ideas to Simon Bolivar. Right? So our connection in Philadelphia is an international connection with these discussions and arguments about freedom. So let's go back to that Declaration of Independence. Where's the word freedom at? Anybody notice it? Oh, no. As a matter of fact, I'm still on my first line. Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's good. That's good. Yeah. You're right. I shouldn't. Okay, wait a minute. What was I just saying? Yeah, I was just saying something, though. Back to the Declaration, the word freedom. Where is it at? It's not there. Oh, my goodness. As a matter of fact, sometimes, it wasn't too long ago, I was at the Union League, and a doctor, she got up in front and said that anybody who doesn't think the Declaration of Independence is a freedom document is not a true patriot. Ooh, I was kind of steaming there. I was kind of ears getting hot and everything. I said, but Joe, you know, you're a guest in the Union League. Sit here and shut up. So I did. I sat there and shut up. They invited me back too, so that must have worked. So I sat there and shut up. But in fact, when we look at the Declaration of Independence, it's actually 20 reasons why we wanted to separate from the king. And halfway down that list of reasons, it says that the king encouraged domestic insurrection. All right. Now let's go to slide number 2. All right. Now, this slide number 2, that's me. Right? That's my company, Becton's Tours and Historical Services, right? So I've got a video over there that I've done about Camp William Penn Civil War video. I've got books. You know, I helped write some books about Congo Square, right? The guy's name is Lamont Steptoe. So he's a very relatively famous poet here in Philadelphia. Uh, Interestingly enough, I met him at the Walt Whitman house one day when I was speaking about Walt Whitman, and he confronted me. He said, "You didn't mention Walt Whitman's sexuality." And I said, "Well, no, I didn't. Why would I?" Well, yeah, he had his own. Yeah, well, I mean, we all do. But did that have anything to do with his poetry? I mean, so he was angry at me initially, but years later he came back and asked me to write the foreword to his book, Meditations in Congo Square. So I kind of stood my ground that day. I guess I could have kind of slithered around and said something, but no, I didn't feel that there was a necessary connection. And later on, he would bring me back. So anybody who's interested in Congo Square, I did write the foreword to the Meditations at Congo Square, and I have that right over here too. I also brought my guitar, so at the end of the presentation, I could play a song for you. Of course, I'm realizing at this point, no one has told me how much time I have. Oh, somebody ought to talk to them. That's not going to happen. About 45 minutes, and I'm about 15 minutes in already. Okay, all right. Woo, got to move faster. All right. So, next slide. Is that a boat or a document? All right. So that's the act that I was talking about when the Dutch withdrew from Spain. All right. We call them Dutch in Pennsylvania, but I don't think they're really Dutch at all, are they? No. Deutsch, right. So we in Pennsylvania made up our own way of saying it, and we call them Pennsylvania Dutch, when actually they're Pennsylvania Deutsch. Okay. So, at any rate, they wanted to get away from Spain. Philip was treating them bad, and they started their move. Guess what the Spanish did? The Spanish year. Yeah, you rock. 1588. This was the fleet. They were going to come to the Netherlands, and they were going to beat them up. They were to come to Great Britain, and they were going to whip them up because of that Sir Walter Raleigh guy. Yeah. Now, of course, we say he's got a letter of marque and he's a really cool guy, but they say he's a pirate, and they're really, really sick of him. So, 1588, this fleet is coming to reclaim all these things. By the way, of course, they really haven't gotten over that Henry VIII thing either, right? Coming to reclaim all these properties for Spain, for the empire, for the king, Felipe. And God interceded. That's what we say, God interceded. A horrible hurricane came and destroyed the fleet and stopped the Armada, sunk it, basically. So that's one of the main reasons that we are here today and speaking in English, is because in 1588, the Armada got sunk. So the Dutch pulled away, and of course, they immediately got into the business of people, right? Wonderful, wonderful business. We trade, whatever, wonderful business. They made such a great profit that they're still spending that money to this day. So, sugar. Now, they were a little bit upset because, when the Spanish came here, they had a different title, right? They had their 3 words, right? Do you think there's anything special about threes, anybody? Trinity, here we go. Almost every building that we go into has 3, 2 windows and a door, right? No, not every window, not every door. Most? Half? But the Spanish had their 3. Anybody remember them? Gold, God, and glory. You might as well say gold twice. You're right, because they were obsessed with gold. So they had their 3 too: gold, God, and glory. Sure enough, the people in Mexico got sick of them. They finally got rid of them in 1822, and they were the second country to end slavery in the New World. Anybody remember the third country? I used to brag about this woman all the time. I was Queen Victoria, the teenage queen, Yeah, yeah, yeah. She ended slavery in the West Indies. Yeah, yeah, Queen Victoria. Queen Victoria. And then one guy said, did you miss something? I said, what do you mean I missed this? Queen Victoria tormented the Irish. There are fewer Irish around the world. There are more Irish around the world than in Ireland because of Queen Victoria. And I said, but she ended slavery. And he said, yeah, so. So to this day, that stands for something that I always like to remember and recall for others. Because sometimes I just buy into one fact and I'm all over the top with it, and then find out that there are other facts that may be conflicting, right? So Queen Victoria and her liberations. So we've got APT, we've got Mexico, we've got Canada, and number 4, the United States, the birthplace of freedom, liberty. So he was there. He was there. Thomas Paine was there. How about George Bryant, Speaker of the House? George, no. How about Samuel Bryant, his son? No. How about Pelatiah Webster? Pelatiah Webster. Okay. I know you know this one. Timothy Matlock. Yeah, we all know Timothy. Yeah. He worked on the Pennsylvania Constitution, right? And later on, it was his wonderful handwriting that would rewrite the Declaration of Independence in cursive, right? He was also a military officer in the Pennsylvania militia. So Timothy Matlock, one of those groups that was fighting and actually put freedom in their documents. Ooh. In Pennsylvania, in our Constitution, any man who owned property could vote. Let me say that again. Any man, that means even black men who owned property could vote. Now, James Fortin tells us a wonderful story about he was trying to convince Samuel Beck that he was an influential person. Everybody remember Samuel Beck came down from Massachusetts, built a house out on a river called Sweetbriar. Samuel Beck. So he was in Congress, and James Fortin was telling him, well, look, I don't vote personally, but I've got 19 people who work for me. 10 of them are white, and I can tell them how to vote. So I can direct 10 votes to you. And I thought that was kind of an interesting story, because one of the richest guys literally able to vote. All right. Why couldn't he vote? The gang boys. Our election days. Everybody remember our election day? Well, today we say no drinking on election day, and that's because we abused it so much in the 19th century. The politicians went around, got everybody drunk, and were you going to vote for? The guy that gave you the whiskey, right? And if he says we don't want these people to vote, guess what you're going to do? Block them from voting. So election day in Philadelphia turned out to be frequently one of the most violent days of the year, with drunkenness, fighting in the streets. So early on, it wasn't really that strong, but as we go into the 19th century, it gets stronger and stronger and stronger. So Pennsylvania, with our Constitution, one man, one vote. What do we call it? Democracy. You know what George said? George Washington? You're going to let uneducated people vote? Why would you do that? That's going to create the tyranny of the masses. That's what he called, what we call democracy, what he called the tyranny of the masses. I don't know about that. But he was more of a Federalist, I think he would have called himself. But nonetheless, that was our Pennsylvania Constitution. You think anybody could outdo us in Pennsylvania? I mean, with our friends, the Society of Friends. Next slide. What do we got there? A ship. Right? That's because everybody came here on ships. Except, of course, the Aboriginals who didn't come on ships. Next. Let this voice be heard. Back to the Friends, all right? So, Pennsylvania gets started. The Society of Friends, we all have the inner light of God in us, but some seem to have more light than others. Mm-hmm. So when William Penn arrived here, one of the first things he did was to buy Africans, enslaved people. He was the proprietor. He didn't have to buy Africans. He could have ended slavery right there, but no, he didn't. Mm-hmm. So up to this day, we still see one of his houses in the middle of the zoo, his grandson's house, John Penn. Solitude. So right there in West Philly, by the way, I'm from West Philly. So it's important to me. Solitude and Oglethorpe were the Penn's properties right down the street from the place where I lived and grew up. So yeah, instead of ending slavery, of course, he bought his own slaves. And then in 1701, it was a big chance. The Pennsylvania Charter of Privileges. Now we can really do it. William Penn, what do you say? Says nothing about it. Looks like the Declaration says nothing about it. Looks like the Constitution says nothing about it. So William Penn had a chance, didn't take that chance. The rest of the Friends, of course, were very active, pressing. John Woolman, everybody remember John Woolman? The guy who only wore white clothes? John? No. Ralph Sandiford. Yeah. Yes, they were both abolitionists. How about the guy on this picture right here? Anthony Benezet, eh? How about him? Yeah. Benezet, of course, wrote several tracts about what life was like in Africa and how Africans were, in fact, human beings. It didn't go over too well, actually. His wife, Mary Marriott, so she was extremely vocal and over it all the time. I got all the way to Mary Marriott without mentioning the one woman who had major problems with the Declaration of Independence. She's from Massachusetts, right? John Adams's wife, Abigail. And she said, John, when you're working on these important documents, remember the ladies, because all men would be tyrants if they could be. Well, I think John was under a lot of pressure when he came in here talking about remembering the ladies, because everybody's saying, who wears the pants in your family? What are you talking? Kind of man are you? So I think he got a lot of static with it. But he also stuck with it, because when we look at the Massachusetts Constitution, the Massachusetts Constitution has that in there. Right? So John Adams, before our Declaration, was involved with that. And of course, one of the downsides of the John Adams story is that, of course, he defended the British soldier who shot Crispus Attucks and the other 3 guys who got shot at the Boston Massacre. So he defended them, and he said that Attucks was and the other Corps guys were hoodlums, right? And the British, guess what? The British soldiers got off. Surprise? Yeah. They didn't get hung. They didn't go to jail. They didn't pay fines. I think they got off. They got. Whoa. Even though they weren't convicted. Okay. Wow, I didn't know that. They didn't really have an order to shoot. Yeah. And it was kind of overkill. The guys threw snowballs, so they got shot. So. Ooh. That's a good point. Because it was big. And as a matter of fact, at the Declaration, they would actually sometimes remove people from this country and take them to someplace else to be tried in different courts. So that was one of our big complaints. And of course, our biggest complaint was about the money, right? And we're bringing in people. You say, well, you got to pay taxes. We're bringing in sugar. They say, you got to pay taxes. We're bringing in tobacco. They say, you got to pay taxes. We say, we don't pay taxes. You know, that's not what we do. So big fights. 4 reasons, of course, for every war: money, land, power, and freedom or religion. Every war, all times, put those things in, and you'll see it going over and over and over again. So who could possibly beat Pennsylvania when it comes to freedom? Every man has a right who owns property to vote. Who could beat that? New Jersey. Yeah. New Jersey said women who own property could vote. Let me say that again. New Jersey said women who own property could vote in their Constitution 1776. So Pennsylvania allowed men to own property and vote. New Jersey allowed men and women, and that's because that also meant Africans. Now, by 1807, New Jersey dropped that rule and kicked that out of their Constitution and went on. Okay? Pennsylvania, black men could actually vote until 1838. Yeah. We were rocking. They tried to kick us out of the vote in 1813, but that famous James Fort, the sailmaker, he wrote the Letter of the Colored Citizen in 1813, demanding that we keep the right to vote. He fought in the Revolution. He pays his taxes. He's a landowner, and how dare you not let me vote? So that stopped the movement in 1813, but then it came back again in the 1830s, and by 1838, African men lost the right to vote in Pennsylvania. His son-in-law is a guy, Robert Purvis, and he wrote the Letter of 40,000. And that Letter of 40,000, he complained about that whole thing about losing the right to vote and how we had been here since the Revolution and even before the Revolution. So the Pennsylvania Act for the Gradual Abolition of Slavery, 1780, Thomas Paine is there, and they're going to abolish slavery in Pennsylvania. March 1st, 1780, we all have picnics, parties, parades. No picnics, no parties. Well, I think that the gradual act for the abolition of slavery was so gradual that nobody noticed it. You had to serve an indenture for up to 28 years. Now, for guys, this wasn't too bad. A guy could be indentured for 5 to 7 years and learn anything: doctor, lawyer, Indian chief, anything. Girls were indentured for 7 to 14 years, and they only learned the art and mystery of housewifery. And even worse than that, if you happen to fall in love and get pregnant, it's a breach of contract, and they could add 14 more years. 28 years of indenture. You think you're going to survive that? Unlikely. Some people did, but unlikely. So these freedom issues are right there all the time, punching away at us. Freedom issues. So sure enough, the Constitution of the United States, this one's going to be great. We know everything's going to happen. Now, it's the Constitution. One of my teachers was a bagpipe player. His name was Rufus Harley. I don't know if any of you are old enough to remember Rufus, but he was always walking around downtown playing his bagpipes. He used to say he's playing in the key of C for liberty. That was Rufus Harley. You can still find his recordings and stuff around. I brought him up because he said he's surprised they didn't call it a constitution. They love three so much instead of a constitution. Okay? So Rufus Harley and his constitution. Okay? Sure enough, the Constitution is a job description for the federal government. It tells us the president's power, job, and limits. Congress's job, powers, and limits. Supreme Court's job, powers, and limits. And the states' job, powers, and limits. That's what the Constitution is about, with a number of interesting additions that came onto it. Things that we really love, guns, all kinds of things. So the Constitution of the United States. One thing that bugs me about the Constitution is that preamble. In the middle of the preamble, it says that we encourage, we will ensure domestic tranquility. I mean, so I was real confused about that because the next line talks about the military, right? So going back to the Declaration of Independence, domestic insurrection, I was a domestic. And when Lord Dunsmore, next picture must be Lord Dunsmore. Is it? Tall, skinny Scottish guy? Lord Dunsmore. So Lord Dunsmore issued his proclamation, right? And in Lord Dunsmore's proclamation, said, anybody who fights for the king against the Americans will be free. What do you mean by that? He said, we'll be free. Come to the British lines, you'll be free. It happened all over Virginia, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. Anybody ever hear of a guy named Henry Washington? No, he wasn't one of the regular Washingtons, not like George and Lawrence and Joe. No, he was one of the Africans named Washington. He escaped with the British, what they called the Ethiopian Regiment, and he fought against the Americans. After the war was over, they said, well, you know you can't stay in America, Henry. Where are you going to go? So Henry left and he went back to Africa. That's right. There was a country established by the British for the Africans who had fought against the Americans. Anybody know the name of it? Sierra Leone. And the capital? Freetown, Freetown, Freetown. Sierra Leone, Freetown. Hey, how come they didn't tell us about that in high school? How come they didn't tell us about that in college? They said it was American history course. They did say that. Well, nonetheless, Freetown. People went to Freetown. They got a little carried away when they were there. Around 1800, they decided to have a revolution for democracy. Didn't work out. The king wasn't having it. So, but nonetheless, to this day, Sierra Leone is still there. A lot of times when I mention this country, people yell out, Liberia. Liberia came a lot later, like 20 years later. And Liberia was set up by the United States. Well, Sierra Leone was set up by Great Britain. A lot of the Africans who went to Great Britain, of course, didn't fare well. You got there and they said, well, where are you going to work? Where are you going to live? Who are you going to marry? Oh, no. Not here. Not here. So guess what? They didn't have any jobs, so many of them stole. In those days, there were some 25 crimes that you could be executed for by the British, usually hung. They like to hang people, usually hung. Of course, they gave these guys a little break because they figured they didn't know. And we also needed people in this new area that we were colonizing. Anybody know what it is? South Wales, Australia. So some of the first Westerners to establish the country of Australia were actually expatriated Africans from America who fought against George Washington. See? Oh, yeah. Oh, it gets worse than that. They had these two ships of ladies. They got these ladies up the street of London. They have two ships full of them, and they sent them to Australia. So, in fact, some of the founding mothers of Australia were, or had in the past been, I was going to say streetwalker, but okay, prostitute. That's very direct, very direct. So, in America, we had one of those colonies too. Anybody remember what it was? 1739. Savannah, Georgia. Yeah, you rock. People don't know that. That's great. You rock. Savannah, Georgia. When Georgia started in 1739, they said, we're a prison state and no slavery. It lasted about half a year. It didn't last long. Didn't last long. So here we are. We're looking at our Constitution, right? We're looking at our Declaration of Independence, looking at the Pennsylvania Constitution, the New Jersey Constitution. We took a brief stop at the Massachusetts Constitution. But as we're seeing, these things develop over time. I've talked about the 1840s. In the 1840s, we actually had a colored convention in Philadelphia. And in that colored convention, they would bring up some of those statements about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Of course, women weren't standing still while this was going on. Over here in New York, they had their own conference. 48? 1848? 1848, they had their own conference. As a matter of fact, it seems strange to me that Fred Douglass was at the meeting. I don't know. They say weren't many men there, but I didn't hear about James Mott or anything. I don't know. Just a little confusing to me. But Fred was there, and sure enough, they came with their Women's Declaration of Rights. And also borrowing essential pieces from that Declaration of Independence. Well, by the time we get to the 20th century, we African Americans are deep into the whole thing. We want to help identify what freedom is. And of course, out of World War I, we had a very, very special opportunities when we came home from World War I. In Europe, we had realized that everybody doesn't act like they act in America. And came back, and it had some problems. Camp Logan, 1919, riots in Logan, riots in Chicago, riots in New York, riots in LA. So sometimes we call this the Harlem Renaissance. And on the other side, we call it the rise of the New South. So lynchings, murder exploded all over America. A guy like me walking around talking this kind of stuff, you could count the days that I would be alive. I wouldn't be long. But in those days, lynching was a big, big thing. Now, why did it become big after slavery ended? It's because before slavery ended, I was worth $1,000. After slavery ended, I wasn't worth anything. So, lynching. Some of the kids have been telling me, said, well, look, OG, you don't know, you don't get it. He said, if y'all had done your job, we wouldn't have Black Lives Matter now. I said, no, young man, you don't get it. You don't get it. Not that I don't get it, you don't get it. You ever hear of the Anti-Lynching League? No. Well, see, so you don't know. You don't know. We've been fighting against this for 100 years. You just came on the scene. So the Anti-Lynching League, the NAACP, these groups would grow. And by 1941, Robert Wright, he owned a bank on South Street. Anybody know about the Black Bank, Southern Bank on South Street? You must be a historian. You're here, you know everything. All right. Hey, that's like me with the zoo, right around the corner from where I live. Yes. Richard White, a Black man, had his own bank that he set up right there on South Street. Was able to do a good banking business. He did so well, he had his own airplane. He'd fly around. And he decided that he was going to make a holiday, and he was going to call it National Freedom Day. And everybody said, shut up. National Freedom Day? We don't want to hear about that. But guess who was willing to hear about it? The cursing president. Harry Truman? You guys don't remember Harry Truman cursing like a sailor? I guess I'm that old, huh? That old. Nobody remembers that. Yes, Harry Truman signed the act that made National Freedom Day back in the 1940s. So by 1947, that group was coming to Philadelphia, and they're having on February 1st the National Freedom Day celebration. And of course, I'm very excited about it. I was a keynote speaker this year, and I'm excited because Martin Luther King was keynote speaker there, Jesse Jackson keynote speaker there, Thurgood Marshall had been keynote speaker there, as well as a plethora of other famous and important Africans. And I guess I'm not famous nor important, but I do I do like the accolade. I do like the accolade. So to this day, we're still working on that Freedom Day. How about that Liberty Bell? Why don't we call it the Freedom Bell? We used to call it the State House Bell, right? Mm-hmm. We used to call it the Province Bell, right? Then we used to call it the Independence Bell. So when are we going to call it the Freedom Bell? Some people said, well, it doesn't say freedom on it. It says liberty. Proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. Comes with a big question. What's the difference between liberty and freedom? Big question. Big question. We always tout our liberty. We always tout our independence. But in our Declaration, we overlooked our freedoms. In our Constitution, we overlooked the freedom. A lot of different words, a lot of additions, But the word that so many people like me are looking for is that word of freedom. So when it comes to the documents, a lot of you know I don't like first, fattest, biggest, oldest. I don't like it. It's just something to argue over. I don't like it. But you can notice, we weren't the first, we're not the fattest. Well, we might be the biggest right now in the whole world. So when it comes to those documents, they're still moving. They're still changing. Some people say they're horrible. We hate them. But they're still moving. They're still changing. Hey, ladies, how about the last century? We had the Equal Rights Amendment. Remember that one, ladies? What happened? An election fraud. Hey, what could what can I tell you? Hey, I love being around you guys. I will always come back and participate. Um, we've got a lot of stuff to tell, and our stories of Philadelphia are multiple. You think that we call ourselves the city of freedom because of Elton John? No? Was there another song before that said we were the city of freedom? Oh, Bruce Springsteen's Philadelphia. That's right. That's right. That's right. Now, yeah, about the same time, probably. Okay. Anybody else? TSOP. And that was Elton John. Yeah. No problem. No problem. In this world of modern music, everything is so fast and so crazy that it's almost impossible to keep up with. Um, well, questions. That's what I need to do. Open up for questions. I know am I going to sing for you? Yes. Can't discuss something like that in public, no. Oh, yeah, I got to say. Came to Philadelphia. I got a job at the Park Service. Okay. And one of the first papers that I wrote was one called Blacks and the Big Three Documents. So, with a number of changes from 40 years ago, you heard that presentation today. Pennsylvania built a new state house in 1732. Everything was bright and new, shiny and true. In 1738, they finally got it straight. Somebody said, wait a minute, it's not too late, we need a bell. Where is the bell? We want a bell. Bell. So they sent a letter to Thomas Lester of London. He said, send me some dough and I'll make you one. He made up a bell and he set it to sail. It arrived at Philly town as time would prevail. He made the bell. There goes the bell. We see the bell. Chapel bell. So he made up a bell and he set it to scale. It arrived in Philly town as time would prevail. We put it outside in the state house yard. First time we tested it cracked. Must have tested too hard. We need a bell. $17.77 came to town. Everything was messed up. Everything turned around. Everybody had to move. Everybody had to get down. The Congress went to Lancaster, the belt from Allentown, we hit bell. There goes the bell. Where is the bell? About that time, the power of anti-slavery. Wondered what the words on the bell might be. They were words from the Bible. I'll have you understand. Evidence throughout the land. There goes the bell. Centennial. The state house bell, the Providence bell, Centennial bell. The bell. Ballad and the Liberty Bell.
If you do have questions, we just ask you do it in the mic so that people on Zoom can hear. Questions?
You know what my uncle said? He said, when there's no questions, that means you did a good job.
No questions or anyone?
I just wanted to know if you have any recommended supportive reading to go along with some of these concepts that were covered here.
Say, so pick the president over and over and over and over again. That's Gary Wills, and that's a good one. Would you be interested? See, now George Washington is a good topic, but he doesn't sign a lot of those papers. Everybody knows that, right? Because he's too busy fighting the war. He didn't have time to come Philadelphia, sit in the doggone tavern and yeah. He's got to win the war, right? So he doesn't sign much, right? Well, we got Benny, right? Of course, he signed 2, but didn't sign 3. Of course, he wasn't here for the Articles of Confederation, so that's why he didn't sign them. We already talked about a little bit about Roger Sherman and a little bit about Robert Morris, right? So the Constitution with the 3/5 clause and the Fugitive Slave Act, or the Fugitive Act, as they called it at that point, were, two very important parts where they brought Africans into play. We don't talk about it very often, but George Washington in 1794, he went to the Senate and asked them to stop the exportation of Africans. 1794. Some people say there's a direct connection to 1793 with the cotton gin. Maybe it is, maybe it's not, but it is close. Right? So the Constitution and the 1793, that Fugitive Slave Act, the very first one. There's a second one that happens in the 1850s, and that Fugitive Slave Act expands it so that every citizen, every one of us, is now responsible for returning people to slavery. And that didn't go over too well at all. It didn't go over too well. Ultimately led to what we would call the Civil War. So if it's not George, hey, maybe it's just Philadelphia you want to know about. Gary Nash is my favorite. Anybody remember Gary? He just died like a year and a half ago. Yeah, Gary Nash. So Gary Nash, Forging Freedom. Gary Nash is a very good one. It takes you from the 1600s all the way up to the, I guess the 1840s is where he ends, right around there. So that's a very good one. Are you interested in later times? Because then we've got, I always mess up his name. I call him Jim Lane, but that's not really his name. And he wrote the Foundations of Violence, Black Violence in Philadelphia. He wrote the other big thick about the late 19th century. So Jim Lang. Anybody know who I mean when I say Jim Lang? Well, he wrote those two books. Josh? I don't know. You think his last name is Lang, you think? Yeah, okay. Nobody remembers. Well, Jim Lane, look him up. Two great books about Philadelphia history. You have a special interest in Civil War? Yeah, well, Camp William Penn. I've got my video right over here for Camp William Penn. So that's an interesting one. It's only a half an hour. I mean, you got 10,000 guys who went through there. You can't talk much about it for a half an hour. You can't get much done. So I've got the wonderful book at home. I didn't bring it with me. Slave Catchers in Philadelphia. So it's all about Patty Cannon and her sons. Everybody remembers the Cannon Gang. Yeah, well, she was kind of a mean lady. She taught her sons how to steal infants and sell them out. So she's kind of mean. She's kind of mean. Yeah. They lived right on the Delaware border too, so she could easily shuffle people in and out of slavery whenever she wanted to. So that's some kind of a thick one. Well, kind of expensive too. Most of them only cost like $20. I think I did mention Mr. Steptoe and my Congo Square piece. Those are outline books. Do you have special topics? Because you know how we are in Philly. We had a member here who wrote a special book about the come on, North Delaware Avenue. Everybody remember that guy? Harry, yeah. Harry, he wrote a book about that, and yep. So is that something you're kind of interested in? Because we've got all these different books that have been written, some by members of our group, that have been written about different sections of the city. So in fact, I hope to get one out about West Philly in not too long. Okay. Where that big, beautiful mural is. Mm-hmm.
Hope we can hear you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I remember them saying there were a bunch of taverns right along there.
Pam just gave the book Evergreen for people on Zoom if you didn't hear. Are there any other questions? Nobody else has questions? I know you're afraid. You're afraid to bring a question to Joe. Oh, Pam has a question.
Whoa! Wasn't here.
Jim, I just want to say that You are wonderful, and you are a treasure of Philadelphia, and you are a national treasure, and we appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You, you won't believe it, my Civil War regiment just promoted me. I've been a member of the regiment for 30 years, and they just promoted me the other day at the Union League. They made me a captain in my regiment.
Yay.
Well, that's kind of good, but a captain is supposed to have 100 soldiers. See? And I think they made me a captain so I could get into recruiting, I think.
Thank you.
I've got flyers. You can pick up flyers. You can pick up books. You can pick up records. You can pick up. Oh, they don't call them records anymore. You can pick up CDs. Matter of fact, they don't call them CDs anymore, right? They're obsolete, right?
Let's give our final round of applause to Joe. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Marianne.
Thank you.
So just quickly, because I know we went going kind of late here. Oh, I think these are your keys, Joe. These over here. So I'll just, this is still on, right? So just really quickly around the room and up here on the table, we have a QR code about the training program. So if you have not signed up yet, I would encourage everyone to come to the job fair. Even if you're not looking for a job, please come and support, welcome our new corporate members, network with each other, talk to the new members, because a lot of you over the years have been saying how we need to raise the profile of APT in the tourism community, right? This is it. This is your chance to step up now and show that we're, this is our opportunity to shine. So come out, support. Well, we have 20 tables right now, 20 vendors. Oh, well, you don't have to sign up to come. So we actually don't know how many of you are coming, but please come. And the morning of the job fair, that Saturday morning, we're doing a panel on the 2026 plans, the semi-quincentennial plans. New superintendent of the Park Service, Stephen Sims, Catherine Ott Lovell, who was here at the beginning for Philadelphia Visitor Center Corporation, and who's my third one? Why am I blanking now? Oh, Danielle DeLeo Kim from Philly 250. And final message, if you have not filled out the survey for Philly 250, look in Tuesday's email newsletter that I sent out. It's in there. And another one will go out tomorrow, probably by noon tomorrow. The survey deadline is tomorrow. They want to do tours all over Philly in every single neighborhood, especially the undertold, untold stories. So even if you don't have a tour right now, even if you're brand new, just fill out the survey if you're interested, because they really want to work with us. Again, this is our chance to shine, to step up, to show that we're the go-to organization in the city if you want a walking tour. So that's really some good response on the survey. So tomorrow's the last day. If you haven't filled it out, do it tonight, do it tomorrow. Those are my big things. And look at the training program. It's not just for new members. So a lot of professional development and storytelling and tour design, interesting topics. We have now Jim Mundy's here. He's going to do his first ever tour on the Civil War. Back there. Jim Murphy is here. He's going to do a new tour on Avenue of the Founders. Antoinette's going to do her Northern Liberties tour. So we're going to have some really great sessions. Really great sessions. So I hope you will come out to at least some of them. So thank you. And Greta has a quick thing she needs to say.
I have to lower this. I am looking for anyone who might be interested in doing a medical themed tour for Drexel University, a bus tour in May for an alumni group. They are looking for a good person or more. So please let me know. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I just want to quickly plug the APT Book Club. Our selection for March is Master, Slave, Husband, Wife, about William and Ellen Crafts. It's a page turner. I've read it. You cannot put it down every time you think it's going to get quiet. It gets suspenseful. please consider joining the book club Zoom, even if you haven't read the book. It might be just that you're interested and you want to read it. The book club is for anybody if you just want to join the discussion and hear what's going on. We have a book list on the Google Drive as well. The books are fantastic. But please join us for Master, Slave, Husband, Wife in March. It is our selection that addresses both Black History Month and Women's History Month. And I just finished it, and you literally cannot put it down, because just when you think everything's going to get quiet, it doesn't. So thank you.
And one final thing before I forget, because Vance reminded me over there. Vance is from the American Vegan Center. We have our webinar next Wednesday, the 21st at 10 a.m. on sustainable tourism. Fascinating stuff that Philly is not in the forefront of, but we're getting there. Vance is leading the way. You want to say a few words?
I just wanted to say I'm going to be talking about various initiatives in Philadelphia having to do with tourism that are putting sustainability at the forefront. I haven't found a lot of them, but I don't know what everybody here does. If you do something with your tours that has a sustainable angle, that has something to do with fighting climate change, with trying to get people to respect the environment, whatever, feel free to talk to me, because I want to be able to give as complete a picture as possible. Thanks.
Yeah. And that's free. So sign up. You just have to register to get the Zoom link, but it is free. And those are the main things. Anyone else? Antoinette, anything? No, anybody else? It was a good happy hour. '24. Okay. Okay. I think we're good. Thank you all on Zoom who came. And everybody take care, and hope to see you all next week.